What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Raw and Unscripted Show with yours truly, the No Excuses Coach, Mr. Christopher Rausch. Welcome to the Raw and Unscripted Show. And Tuesday nights, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Every single week, we are here on the live video cast. I know lots and lots of you guys listen to the audio podcast. Thank you so much for making us a top 10% podcast all over the world in 20-something plus countries. Thank you. And I appreciate you guys being here. Tonight is going to be a phenomenal show. So as always, I encourage you to take notes, because when we take notes, we take action. And that's super important. It's one thing to be inspired by these conversations. It's one thing to walk away and go, oh my God, Chris and his guests were so phenomenally inspirational. And I'm gonna apply those things in my life. I really am. But first, I'm going to take care of all these other things. And then what happens is we get distracted, and then we lose our intention. We lose our mojo. So I'm a huge fan, in case you haven't been following the show for a while. I like to write things down, because when you write things down, there's this agreement that takes place. And furthermore to that, I'm just going to give you tips right away. I like sticky notes. And here's why I like sticky notes. You take something that you learned from this and you write it down on a sticky note. You peel that sticky note off. And guess what? You put it on your computer monitor, and then you have it right in front of you. And it says, oh my God, I'm going to live unapologetically from this point forward. Oh my God, I'm going to get rid of my excuses and in favor of keeping promises to myself. And you put those sticky notes in front of yourself. And guess what? You start paying attention to that stuff. You start applying that stuff. And here's what happens. I call it the 1% rule. 1% growth every single day. I'm not the same person I was yesterday, and I'm not going to be the same person tomorrow that I am today, because I focus on my personal growth. Today, I was just reading a book. Wow, reading a book. Imagine that. But what I was doing, I was reading a book, and I was taking things and putting them on my sticky notes, and I put the sticky notes on my computer monitor as a reminder to continue that growth process. So oftentimes we get overwhelmed. We get burdened by everything that's going on. We're just trying to survive. I hear it every single day. Chris, I'm doing the best I can. I feel overwhelmed. Well, here's the thing we got to do. We got to sit there and take that intentional action every single day, that 1% growth that will allow us to become a different version of ourselves in 3 months, 6 months to a year, right? And so often we're looking for that magic pill. We're looking for that aha moment. And I was that dude. I was that dude that would buy the book and be like, okay, this book is going to change me. And right, there's principles in there that will help us change and evolve, but it takes time. And really what's happening in today's society, especially with our younger generation that I've been coaching, is everybody wants it right now. But you got to think about this. How long did it take you to get in the situation that you're in right now? Did it take you 30 years? Did it take you 40 years? Did it take you 60 years? We have a broad range of people who listen to this podcast. And what I invite you to do is to have some grace. Have some grace with yourself and have a sense of excitement, because you're on an adventure. Whether you like it or not, you're on an adventure. And when we were kids, what did we do? We sought out adventure. We sought out things that we were curious about. We sought out things that we didn't know about. We went ahead full tilt boogie, and we learned about them, and we fucked ourselves up through going through those things, but we learned. We jumped our bikes off of jumps when we didn't know if we could do it or not, and racked our balls on the crossbar. We rode our skateboard down hills that we didn't have brakes with, but we did it because we had this sense of adventure. But what happens? We get to this point in our life where we want to play it safe. And playing it safe is not going to lend you to having a legacy that you're excited about. And in this conversation tonight, myself and my guest are going to talk about living unapologetically and really living with a sense of adventure and a sense of zest in our life. So again, I encourage you, if you're watching this live, feel free to ask us questions as the broadcast is going on. If you watch us on replay, feel free to type those questions in there. Either myself or Karsta will get back to you, and we'll answer those questions for you. Do not pass up this opportunity. If you're listening to the podcast and you have questions, feel free to send an email, info@noexcusescoach.com. I'm happy to serve you guys, because when I serve you guys and you go out there and serve other people and you become a better version of yourself, guess what? We make the world a better place. And right now the world needs this. We got so much stuff going on with political uncertainty, with artificial intelligence. I've been going down a rabbit hole lately of what artificial intelligence is going to do for our jobs and for everything else in the world. So I can be on the proactive side to help you guys manage and navigate that. And that's what this show is about. The show is about changing our perspective just a little bit every single day and really changing and evolving who we are. So I'm excited to have this particular guest on my show. We had a conversation some time back, because I do pre-interview all of the guests that come on here. And I'm excited to have this conversation. She's the podcast host of a podcast. Let me just tell you this, fuck fine. So that just gives you an idea of where this conversation is going to go tonight. Please welcome to the Raw Unscripted Show, Karsta Marie. What's going on, Karsta? How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. I got to tell you, I'm kind of fangirling here a little bit. This is probably one of the biggest podcasts I've been on, so I'm excited about it.
Well, I'm excited to have you here, and thank you for that. It's been a labor of love. I've been doing it now for 5 years.
Yeah.
And I've poured my heart and soul into this. So I'm excited when I go, and I'm not a big statistics fan. I'm just like, okay, am I impacting people? Yes or no? Yes.
Yeah.
but I do go on every once in a while. I look at the statistic, and for a while I was a top 15%, but now it's been top 10%. And I've avoided the goal of making it a top 5%, but I know that's going to happen in general speak. But I mean, there's something like 6 million podcasts out there that this is rated upon. So I'm pretty excited that that's a top 10%. So thank you for being here, my dear. And first question to you is, what do you want to get across to people most tonight? People are listening, people are watching. What do you want them to walk away from this conversation knowing and feeling in their heart of hearts?
Yeah, I think, the biggest message I always try to spread to people is that you get to design your life according to your rules. I always say live your life by your design, not by default. Like, that's it.
I love that. I love that. But so many people will sit there and they probably tell this to you. I know they tell this to me, but Chris, you don't understand. I've been through so much in my life. I don't know what I'm supposed to be. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I'm just trying to survive. What do you tell folks that are in that position right now that are struggling to find their identity, to really own who they are?
Yeah, me too. Right. Like, we've all been through shit. Honestly, that's my answer. And I call it Gen X, not being super sympathetic to a lot of that, but like, we've all been through some shit. And so you got to dig deep and say, okay, am I going to let all of that define me, or am I going to pause and take a beat and really figure out? And, I like you mentioned in your intro, it's years of that, right? It took me till I was almost 45 years old to say, you know what? I think I get to choose. I get to define myself, right? And for a long time, I let my wounds and I let all of that be who I was. And now it's like, not anymore. I get to choose. And it's hard. It's hard work.
Yes.
But you just got to let yourself be honest with yourself about it.
It's true. I mean, I just did a TikTok video about it the other day, the AAA effect. It's called awareness, acceptance, and action, right? We got to be aware of the situation that we're in. We have to accept it for what it is. Like, my favorite 5 words right now it is what it is. Like, just deal with it. It is what it is. I'm broke. I got cancer. My fucking husband's cheating on me, whatever. It is what it is. But then the third thing that we don't ever do is the take action part. We sit there and we bitch, piss, and moan, and we hope, wish, and pray that something's going to change.
Right.
What was that breaking point for you? I can't even believe that you're over 45. That doesn't even compute looking at you right now.
Thank you.
So what was that breaking point for you to sit there and say, you know what, I'm tired of living in my excuses. I'm tired of living in my shit. What was that for you?
Yeah, I was a high school teacher for over 20 years. What?
I said, bless you. Jesus.
You know what's funny? I look back now and I'm like, oh God, I don't know how I did it. But yeah, so I taught at the high school level for like 20 years. And during that time, I was in a different role for about 5 years. And the boss that I had at that time, she and I kind of butted heads. I was effective in the role, but I wasn't really following her rules on it. And so
imagine that.
Right. Crazy. And she essentially demoted me is really what it came down to. And I took the demotion for a year and I was like, you know what, I'm done with this. And all of this while a relationship that I was in was coming to an end. And I just kind of sat back and was like, I'm kind of done letting life happen to me. And I sat and I really was thinking through all of the shit that I've been through. And I know you probably you said you read through my history, you read through my bio. For audience, it's a laundry list of things that are no different than anybody else. It's just a lot.
Right.
And I just said, you know what? All of these things happened to me and I let them, not all of them, but you know what I mean? Like, I let certain things happen. And I just went, I'm kind of just done waiting for the next thing to happen to me. I need to take action on it. And I didn't know what that looked like. I jumped headfirst out of teaching into coaching and into this online space and doing all this. And it's been hard, but damn, have I learned a lot.
Amen. And I tell people that same thing. So many times people tell me every single day, Chris, it's going to be hard. Yeah. But I tell them but it's going to be fucking worth it. It's going to be so worth it. When we go through those valleys, we always want things to be perfect and easy, but when do we learn and grow the most? When things are challenging. So I get people to shift their perspective about can you be excited about the challenges, because you're going to be so much better on the other side. You're going to have so much more strength and so much more resiliency, and you're going to have less excuses, and you're going to go to bed at night feeling proud of yourself because you're no longer a doormat for everybody else to walk on. And I can imagine that's kind of what was in your life. You were allowing people to walk all over you. Yep. And what I tell people, I can't take credit for this. This has to go to Bob Donnell. When it becomes acceptable, it becomes inevitable. And I was the same person like you. I was the people pleaser. I was like, if I can make everybody else happy, then I deserve to be happy. But if I can't make everybody else happy, then it's my fault. And I got that from childhood. If I can make my mom happy, if I can make everybody else happy, if I'm worthy of their love, then gosh darn it, then I'm okay. And that took me until my mid 30s and a lot of coaching and some therapy to sit there and realize, it's okay to be not okay. And it's okay to let people out of your life and to wish them well. The people that don't support you, the people don't say, Karsta, you deserve, an amazing relationship. You deserve love and happiness. You deserve to have a job where you're respected. But when we go through those valleys, I mean, it's pretty amazing what it is that we can learn and grow from. And before I ask you the next question, I just want to acknowledge a couple of people here. We got Ted in the house. What's up, Ted? I was reached out to you to see how you're doing. He says, Christopher, love the show. Thank you. And shared. Appreciate you, brother. I hope you're doing well. I hope your roommate situation is better and that you're healing. We got Jacqueline Rose, my Irish sister from another mister. She says, hello, everyone. Hey, Christopher and Kari. Thank you, Jacqueline, for being here. And I know, and I could feel this, I could sense this, and I think this is going to be an important question for everybody to listen to the answer of, is empathy and forgiveness. Right. So oftentimes we struggle with empathy and forgiveness, not just for other people, but for ourselves. So talk to me about that journey for you to be able to become the person that you are today, having gone through all that shit. What is that process like for you to be able to find love and empathy and forgiveness for yourself and perhaps some of the things that you maybe have quote unquote made mistakes on?
That's a big question.
Yeah.
Oh,
I felt really drawn to ask that. But yeah, because I know in my personal life, I've had to, while you think about that, I'll share something. I know that for me, it took a lot. It was easier for me to have love and empathy and forgiveness for other people who wronged me because I felt like that was the right thing to do. But for myself, that's where I struggled. And that's where I actually went and sought out therapy. And I found out that I had guilt and shame associated with being nice to myself. And again, it went back to that. Have I earned the right to play a video game today? Have I earned the right to do these things? Have I proven myself enough today to give myself love and compassion? Have I got the validation and the approval from others? And when I stopped doing that, and when I realized it was great to be me and it was great to let that stuff go, the healing started, and that guilt and that shame associated with that stuff start to fall away. And I opened myself up to more abundance in my life.
Yeah. So I think for me, the moment came, and I'm just going to say right now, I will get teary-eyed talking about this. I just will. There were two moments. And I will preface this by saying I always vowed that I would never put the pressure onto my children to be my caretakers. Like, they were never going to be responsible for my happiness. They were the reason for it, but I were going to make them feel responsible for it, to your point, right? But two things happened. When I first jumped into this space and I left teaching, it got real hard real quick. Like, shit got really real. Yeah. And I was sitting on the couch having a conversation with my oldest, and we were just like, we always kind of would sit around and have kind of these deep conversations, and we were sitting there just kind of bullshitting. And they said, Mom, I know that this is really hard for you right now, but I need you to know that I am so proud of you, and I am so grateful that I get to learn alongside you at my age so that I don't have to learn it at your age.
Hey.
And I just, in that moment, I was like, okay, this is hard and scary, but this is what I need to be doing. And it was kind of, that was the first moment where I started to really give myself permission to do the hard things. And I knew that no matter how hard, how ugly it got, they were there to support me emotionally. They were just they were there for it. They were the ride or die. They were there for whatever the journey was going to bring. So just kind of gave me that affirmation that I was moving in the right direction. And the second time, this is a few years later, and she had moved out, and I was living with my youngest, and I were still living in the same home together, and finances were a shit show. And I had one of those nights, we've all had them, where I was curled up in the corner just sobbing about, like, how am I going to make this work? And like, what have I done? And what do I need to, I don't want to go back. I knew I did, just having all the struggles and all the tears. And she just said, Mom, and I'm apologizing to her, like, I'm so sorry. This is so, and she goes, Mom, why are you sorry? Like, you're the best mom. And just their grace showed me that I could give myself grace.
Amen.
And it was a hard pill to swallow because, like I said, you never want that pressure on your kids, but it came from such a genuine place. And I was like, okay, well, if they can give me grace for not being perfect, I should probably start giving myself some grace and model that for them, So
I love that. And thank you for sharing that, because that's so important for people to listen to right now, because so oftentimes we're putting on that shield of awesomeness. Like, I've got it all figured out. And we're not letting people see our dark sides. And we're not letting people see the fact that we go to bed crying every night, or we're thinking about how am I going to keep this all together. And we're trying to put on that brave face. But you did an excellent, I don't say thing, but you set an excellent example for your kids to understand what that looks like, and what courage looks like, and what authenticity looks like, and what vulnerability looks like. Because so oftentimes we're trying to put on that brave face for everybody else, but we're, like you said so perfectly, we're all going through our different shit. No matter if we're black, white, straight, gay, Republican, Democrat, all, whatever word we're from, we're all going through those moments of am I enough? Right. And that's what I talk about. And that's what I teach people is you are more than worthy, that you are deserving. I was just talking with one of my coaching clients yesterday about that. I have her saying I am statements. And I said, how does that feel for yourself? Because she's always felt like she wasn't deserving, of love and abundance and things of that nature. I said, do you feel your heart opening up? I said, do you feel like that? And she says, absolutely, Chris, 100%. And I said, how does that feel? And she goes, it feels pretty incredible. It feels really inspiring that I'm just on the front end of all of this. And I know in 6 months to a year that I'm going to be such a different person. And for you setting that example for your kids, they're going to be out there setting that example for other people. And together we're going to lift the world up, and we're going to make that big difference because of that ripple effect. So I applaud you in being vulnerable, and I applaud you in raising beautiful kids in that respect. And my question to you now is, what would you think? What advice would you give yourself, maybe 10 or 15 years ago? I'm not talking about when you were a teenager, but what advice would you go back in some of those situations, or maybe you accepted the behaviors of others that put you down? What advice would you give that version of yourself?
I mean, I think it's kind of it sounds really cliche, but just to be brave, stand your ground, and know that you're worthy of it, right? And just to remind, I always think of like, what would I tell myself? Well, it's exactly what I would tell my kids, right? When I look at my kids now, what would I tell them? I would tell them, it's going to be hard. You're going to go through some shit. You're going to do some stupid shit.
Right.
Be smart about doing stupid shit, and give yourself grace when you screw up. Like, that's it.
It really is. I mean, it's true, because if we realize, and I love the fact that you started the show with the fact that life is happening for us and not to us, just that little perspective shift. Because sometimes people sit there and say, oh my God, why does this keep happening to me? And I'm like, well, how about we shift our perspective here for a second? Can you imagine that everything that you've been through and everything that you're going through is preparing you for what's next?
Yeah.
How does that idea fit for you? Right.
Well, and I know one of the things you and I connected on the first time we chatted was I literally, like, when you asked me, like, what would I tell myself? I truly live by no regrets. I don't, is some of the shit that happened gross, and did I like it? No, it sucked. It was hard. I hated it, but it's also, like you said earlier, like, I learned from it, right? I grew from it. Sometimes it wasn't always great growth, because, like you said, right, you start to internalize, like, oh, if I act this way, then this person, like, but it all shaped me. And it's all, like, I can look back at things now and say that really sucked, but wow, here's what I've learned since then. And I can look back on it now and say, this is how I'm different now from then. And so when this comes up again, this is how I'm going to face it differently.
It's so true. I mean, just having that perspective of not being a victim, right? So many times we're a victim to our past. We're a victim to the things that people told us. Well, Chris, I'm this way because I was abused, and Chris, I'm this way because of this. And I'm like, well, how would it feel if you no longer had that belief? Because if we go back and we look at things, that for me, I've been studying people since I was a youngster, because my life was pretty fucked up. I know that I was homeless.
Out of survival, right?
I was a 7th grade dropout. Yeah, 7th grade dropout. I tried to kill myself twice. Fortunately, I sucked at it. I went back, got my GED. I spent 12 years in college and got my master's degree the same year I bought my first house. And I've always been very curious about where do we really get fucked up. And I thought that it was when we were teenagers, right? We're going from kids to adults in that interim space. We've got, puberty going on and everything else. But I started researching child psychology, and I found out we really become the people that we become between the ages 0 and 5. A lot of those beliefs, a lot of the things that our parents told us and our teachers told us, you suck, you're ugly, you're stupid. And then we sit there and go, oh, okay, look, see, I'm stupid. Look, see, somebody didn't like me, so I'm ugly. And then we walk around with those beliefs and we wonder why we're not accumulating abundance in our life, because our frequency is so low that we're not able to achieve those things because we've got this limiting belief about ourselves. And so what I invite people to do is to sit there and say, okay, you're carrying around all this anger and animosity and frustration and regret and blah, 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 blame and all those other things. What would it feel like if you just went like this and just let it go? If it's not serving you, let it go. Oh, Chris, that's easier than it sounds. Of course it is. But person by person, here's what you could do. And here's a tidbit for everybody who's watching this. Write down what you're tolerating from yourself, what you're tolerating from other people, and what you're tolerating from inanimate objects. And when you get honest with yourself and you write it down, ladies and gentlemen, don't just put it in your head, write it down. What am I tolerating for myself? Yes, the sticky notes. There you go. What am I tolerating for myself? I tolerate the fact that I don't keep promises to myself. If you get nothing out of this show, ladies and gentlemen, keep your promises to yourself. And guess what's going to happen? You're going to get results. And when you get results, you're going to get that confidence, and you're going to start to change some of those beliefs that you have going on in your brain. What am I tolerating from other people? I tolerate the fact that my kids use me, abuse me, and don't pick up after themselves. I tolerate the fact that my husband speaks down to me. I tolerate the fact that my boss or my coworker does this. And you write those things out. And invariably, when my coaching clients do that, they come back and they have like maybe 5 or 6 things out of each category, those 3 categories. Mm-hmm. And I sit there and I look them in the face over Zoom and I'm like, are you being honest? Are you being really, truly honest? Are you embarrassed about all the other things that you're tolerating from yourself? And maybe you didn't write it down because you didn't want to see it for yourself. And I encourage people, go back, and as things are coming up, write it down on a piece of paper. It's going to hurt and it's going to suck. And you're going to be like, oh my God, how did I ever allow this to happen? Yes, you allowed it to happen, but now you're at that point in your life where you can switch it around just like you did. And when you can sit there and go, okay, I've got all these things that I'm tolerating for myself. I'm tolerating from inanimate objects. We allow things to frustrate ourselves, and we sit there and all those little itty bitty things pile on. So we're walking around with all this chaos and overwhelm. We're wondering why we can't find love. We can't find the perfect job. We can't increase our personal business, whatever it might be. Ask yourself, what is the low hanging fruit? What are 3 or 4 things that I can stop tolerating today? I could tell my kids, because I just went through this with somebody the other day. They said, I have no time. I'm the no excuses coach. And I said, you don't have any time. And they said, no, Chris, my schedule from the time I get up till the time I go to sleep is booked. And I'm like, really? I bet you we could find a couple hours. I promise you we can. And so we went through this whole hour-long exercise. I said, tell me about your day from the time you get up until the time you go to sleep. And in there, she said, oh, I have to do the laundry and make the kids lunch. And I said, how old are your kids? And I had a feeling of how old they were. She goes, they're 9, 12, and 17. And I said, okay. And I said, so you make their lunch every day? And she goes, oh, I have to make my husband's lunch too. And I said, okay, so you make their lunch every day and you're doing the laundry for all of those people in your house? Yes. She goes, yes. And I said, what happens if you don't do it anymore? Oh, Chris, you don't understand. They've gotten used to me doing it. Gives me all these excuses. And I said, okay, I totally understand that. I said, so I'm going to go dark for a minute because I believe, there's a lot of leverage in darkness. And I said, so you get hit by a bus tomorrow. I said, are you telling me that your kids aren't going to eat lunch anymore and they're not going to have clean clothes? And she's like, didn't want to say it out loud. And she goes, no. And I said, what would happen? She goes, well, probably my husband would start doing it, or maybe my kids would start doing it. And I said, okay, how comfortable are you with telling your husband and your kids that you're no longer going to make their lunches and that they have to help out with the laundry effective immediately? Oh my God, Chris, I'll get so much backlash and blah, 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 blah. And they'll this. And I'm like, okay, well, guess what? This is your time to stand up for yourself. This is your time to gain 2 hours of your day to focus on what you want to do. You want to start this online business. So how bad do you want it on a scale of 1 to 10? She says a 10. And I said, okay, here's how the conversation is going to go. You're going to sit there and say, hey guys, I need your support. I've been doing this for you guys for so long, but I'm not setting you up for success. So guess what? Here's what I need you to do. Bobby, Cindy, and Jerry, I need you to gather your laundry. I need to sort your laundry. I need you to bring it down to the washing machine. Let's start with that. And then I'll put it in the washer. I'll put it in the dryer, and then I'll put it back in the buckets, and you guys take them back upstairs and you guys put them away. How about that? Can we agree on that? Can you guys help me with that? Because mom really needs some space. Mom really needs to feel better about herself. And I need your help. I said, how does that sound for yourself? And she goes, well, since you put it that way, And I said, yeah, what are they going to say? No, mom, we're not going to do it. Then what's going to be your response? And what's going to be your response if you own it? And she sat there and thought about it. And she goes, I'm going to tell them tough shit. Well, this is how it's going to be. This is what we're going to do. You have to make a proclamation for yourself. So talk to us about that in your life. Where have you had to draw the line and the boundaries with other people? You've drawn the line and the boundaries with yourself and said, hey, listen, I'm not going to tolerate this shit anymore. Right. So what has that been for you with other people in your life to sit there and say, listen, I'm not going to accept, from your friends or from your coworkers or whoever it might be. What's been that journey for you?
Yeah. I think for me, and I love her to death, but I think the hardest relationship where I've had to draw that line is with my own mother.
I knew it. Just something was telling me, mom,
right? We love moms, but I think that's been the hardest one. And part of it is, and I hate to use this term because it kind of gets tossed around, but we truly did a lot of those traumas, or we went through a lot of those traumas together. And so there's a little bit of that trauma bond situation going on.
Sure.
And so it's like in any relationship, even in like with your partner, if one of you is growing and changing and sort of morphing and the other one isn't, or they're growing and changing in different ways, that becomes a little bit of a rub. And so that one's been hard, but it's kind of the same thing. Like I tell people I coach, friends, when they always say, I don't have a choice. I say, okay, pause.
Yeah.
You do have a choice. You just don't like it.
Yes. Great way of putting it.
You have a choice. Well, I have to sacrifice. No, you don't have to sacrifice. You just don't like the options in front of you. So you got to figure out which one's going to serve you best, which one's going to bring you the most peace or bring you to that goal you have or whatever it is. You've got to figure out what that one is and then go with that. Yeah. It might not be the best choice. You might have to give up some stuff. Your kids might, your kids might have to give up a little bit of freedom. You might have to give up, because as a mom who's had some of those conversations, it's about control. Give up a little bit of that control.
Mm-hmm.
Let them screw up, give them the life lesson, but you have to make the hard choice. Yeah. And just, you don't have to like it, but there's a choice there. And so I think that's been the biggest lesson for me when I get into those situations in any relationship, right? I have to say, okay, pause. I have a choice here. And just remind myself, like, I have a choice of how I deal with this person. I have a choice of what I tolerate with this person. I might not like it. I might not like the action I have to take.
Right.
But I still have a choice.
And you're going to love the outcome on the other side of it.
Exactly.
So have you spoken to your mom about this? Have you had that conversation with her?
We've had some hard conversations. Yeah. And we're in a pretty good place now. Like we went through a phase where we weren't talking for a couple of years, and it came back around, and it's fine. And we're in a pretty decent place right now, but it's just having the hard conversations, no matter who it is in your life. They're not easy.
Yeah. And I tell people, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because those hard conversations are going to illuminate one of two things: that those people are on your team or they're not really on your team.
Yeah.
And then you're going to find that out. And yeah, is it going to suck if you have to wish them well? I had to wish my sister well. I got reunited with her back in 2005. I hadn't seen her since I was 9 years old. I re-engaged with her in my 30s, and she was in her 40s. And I found out she was a victim all day long. It was unbelievable. And so long story short, I got to a point and I'm like, this person is toxic. And I'm not going to, just because she's blood related, I'm not going to allow that toxicity in my life. And I thought, okay, if this person didn't share blood with me, would I want anything to do with them? Right. And my first answer was, hell no. No, this person is not enjoyable to be around. She's toxic. She's blaming everybody. She's like, she calls our mother your mother. And so I got to a point where I said, you know what? I wish you all the best. I hope you have an amazing life. I hope you find all the happiness and joy you want, but please don't ever contact me again. I said, I'm going to live my life. You live your life. All the best. I thought about it for quite some time, and I felt really good about that decision. And that decision helped me understand that I don't need to accept and tolerate all those negative people in my life just because I think I can help them, or just because I'm a coach, or because I've been through a lot of stuff, that I can save them. Because that was my thing, is if I can save these people, if I can change their perspective about things, then I'm a good person. And so I felt guilty at first about being able to do this. But then I realized that when I stopped allowing all that toxic energy in my life, the people that were there, like you said, the ride or dies, they got so much better version of me. They got the love. They got to see the excitement in Chris. They didn't see the person that was having to tolerate the weight and baggage of everybody else. And it was hard, but it was so worth it. And I have zero regrets about it. I've had to do that with best friends. I've had to do that with former coworkers where I sat there and I had to say, listen, I love and appreciate you. We've had some amazing times, but I think our journey ends right here. And there's no harm, there's no foul. I will always remember these amazing times. And you know what, Krista? It was out of maybe 7 or 8 people I've had to do this with, all but one validated my decision like that with their response. Oh, you're an asshole. You're this. You're selfish. You're. I'm like, and I made the right decision. Only one person says, "Wow, I'm really disappointed at this, Chris. You know, I really thought." And I told that person, I said, you know what? I said, I appreciate you being honest and vulnerable. You know, maybe it's not right now. You know, maybe check back in a few years, and maybe if you're on a different path, maybe we can do something. But honestly, I think you need this time alone. I think I've been codependent with you. I think I've been that person like, oh, Chris, let me call up and spend 2 hours bitching about my life. I don't want to do that anymore. And unfortunately, I have not heard from that person, and that's all the best. But I think what we can do is we can set the example for the people that are watching and listening to this tonight. When you get done with something and you realize that you are the priority, right? You are the priority. And when you make those decisions for yourself, you give that better version to your kids and to your husband and to your wife and to your friends and to your family. Because I'll set this example, and then I'm going to grab some of these comments, and I have a question for you. I asked somebody this recently. They came to me for coaching, and I said, we were going through the same kind of conversation. And I said, who do you love most in your life? And they said, my kids. And I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you love your kids? And she said 10. Yeah. And I said, okay. I said, how are you treating yourself? What is your self-talk? What is your self-love care? What is all that? And she goes, oh my God. She goes, it's like a 4 or 5. And I said, so you say you love your kids and your kids at a 10. I said, but you're at a 4 or 5. I said, what are you honestly giving your kids? Are you giving your kids a 10 or are you giving your kids a 4 or 5? She started bawling. Kid you not, started crying right here on a Zoom call. And she goes, oh my God, I didn't realize that they deserve so much more. And I said, you deserve so much more. I said, can you say that for me? I said, can you say that? And she had the hardest time saying, I deserve so much more. Because she was the doormat and the doorstop and the everything for everybody else. Her ex-husband treated her like shit. She allowed her friends to walk on her. She was giving money when she didn't have money. And I said, when does that stop? And she's crying and blood. She goes, it stops right now. And I said, yes, it does. I said, what are 3 things you could start doing in the next week to start taking better care of yourself? And she told me those 3 things. And I said, how on a scale of 1 to 10, because I'm a scale person. Yeah. You can never pick 7, by the way. Yep. And I said, how committed to you are this? And she couldn't afford my coaching, but I said, I'll help you out. And God is my witness. She was able to check in. This was a couple of weeks ago. She was able to check with me last week. She changed her negative self-talk. I told her to eliminate the words always and never. And I said, add the power of yet. Like if you sit there and say, oh, I haven't found the right person yet. Through the Zoom call, I could tell that she was a different person. And she's like, thank you so much, Chris. You know, I'm going to join your group coaching program, blah, blah, blah. But that's what we can do for people is we can set that example. But when we get sick and tired and we make that proclamation that we're not going to allow those people to do those things for us anymore, shit changes. I want to grab a couple of these comments, and then I have a very interesting question for you. Okay. Let's see. We got Jacqueline Rose sitting there saying, she goes, I'll tell you about my health. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I had to a pep talk with myself, and I'm being proactive with my health. 100%. Right? You got to definitely be proactive with your health. That's massive. Most important thing. Amy Harrington is in the house. She goes, we love Kari and the Fuck Fine podcast. Thank you, Amy, for being here. She says, we love Costa and Fuck Fine. Thank you, Amy. Appreciate you being here.
Love her.
We've got the Passionitas Project. Yep. Culture.
Yes.
So thank you guys for being here. She says, thank you for sharing that powerful story, Kari. Appreciate you. Jacqueline Rose says, courage is facing your fears head on, no matter how scared you feel. 1,000%. Because I sit there and I look at it. You can either be scared or excited. It's the same emotion, but it's how you have your perspective on it. Yep. Ted's chimes in here. He says, I don't want to hide my feelings from people, good or bad, fearing of people. I have to get my glasses on. Fearing of making people mad and being misunderstood. It has been a difficult at times, but seems that to be helping me get past my fear and being hurt by people. Yeah, 100%. When you got to sit there and focus on what it is that your opinion of yourself is, Ted goes on to say, he goes, I'm afraid of people's responses to me expressing myself because I was abused as a child and young adult, physically and emotionally. But you're healing, Ted. That's what you're doing. You're healing.
Well, before you ask your question, I just want to
Sure.
comment on that just super quick, because I think one of the things that I've really been working on a lot lately with some specific people, but just in general too, is making the decision in the moment if addressing, let's say it's a behavior, right? Somebody's acting a certain way and it's not serving me. I've gotten much better at really evaluating, is addressing it the appropriate way for me to go, or is it just better for me? And not in an avoidance sort of way, but in a what's going to serve me best and create the most peace for me? Is it going to be to just walk away and let it be? Because there are people that are not going to change no matter what you say to them.
100%.
No matter how you say it. And so really taking that pause, I think, to say, and so I guess my point is, it's not always bad to not say the thing. You just have to decide what's the right way to go for you.
Do you have an example of that? Perhaps a coaching client or somebody that you've dealt with?
Yeah. So the client that I was working with had a family member that she was just really struggling with. And it was like every time she addressed this person, it was like the brick wall and the defensiveness and the victim and all of that. And I said, at what point are you going to stop banging your head against the wall?
Yeah.
Like, if you know what the reaction's going to be before you even say it, like, from history, right? Like, then you have a choice in that moment to decide if it's worth it to move on or not. And that's different than avoiding it out of fear.
True.
Right? To make the choice to say, I know how this conversation is going to go, and it's not going to get me a result that's going to serve me. So I'm going to just let that go in peace. And I'm going to move on with my life.
Take ownership. I mean,
Yeah,
essentially
exactly.
that's what it is taking ownership.
Exactly.
And not hiding from our true self. I mean, I titled this thing living unapologetically.
Yeah.
And thank you, by the way, Nellie from Hooked on Humanity is here. She says this is a very essential discussion. Thank you, my dear. I appreciate it. We got Sandy Archer in the house. She says hello, Christopher and Kari. Thank you, Sandy, for being here. I appreciate you guys all being here. Feel free to share this out if you're getting value out of this. Share this out on your social media and say, "Oh my God, I'm learning so much from this podcast." I would love and appreciate you guys for doing that. You are always so great about doing that. We got Tim Gillette in the house. What up, Tim Gillette? He says, "Good evening. Thank you, Tim, for being here." Go back and catch the beginning of this conversation if you guys are just tuning in. It's been amazing so far. I'm huge about questions. I believe that questions have the power to unlock so much within ourselves and with our coaching clients. What are some of your favorite questions to ask yourself or to ask your coaching clients to ignite a different perspective? Because I believe that when you shift your perspective about something, everything else can become a domino effect and change. What are some great questions that we can give to our listeners right now that can help them perhaps get unstuck or look at something a little bit differently?
I think the first question I always ask myself is, what do I need to get out of this situation?
Love it.
And what do I need emotionally? What do I need? What do I need out of this? What's going to best serve me? And then that helps me take that first step into action. If I need A, then I better take whatever choice gets me to path A. If I need B, then I better make that choice. Right. So I think for me, that's the biggest first question. If I'm really undecided, one of my favorite strategies is to, I put one hand on my chest and one hand on my belly, and I do some deep breathing. And I always start by asking myself really stupid yes or no questions that I already know the answer to, right? Like, do I have a cat? Yes or no? I have 2 kids. Yes or no? And I start to feel where the answers kind of come up in my body. And then I use that as a gauge to then progress into, like, is this the choice that's going to serve me best? Yes or no? Right. And so, and just training, because I know you and I had talked about too, like, I'm really into, I've got to nurture a relationship with myself. And that's one of the actual, like, tangible ways that I really work on learning to listen to my own voice so that I can then make those choices to live unapologetically. And so it's just that tangible of like, what's the right choice? And because we always, I don't know. And we kind of get into that paralysis of thinking we don't know. You do know.
Yes, you do.
You do know. And so, and it's one of two things. Either you're not admitting it to yourself or you just haven't learned how to listen to yourself. And so what do I need? And then learning to listen to the answer when it comes up.
I love that. Any other questions that you, because I'm going to share a couple of mine.
You share a couple of yours. I'll see if it triggers anything because I can't think of any off the top of my head.
So one of mine, I just helped somebody with the other day. Will I be happy with this decision tomorrow? Because so oftentimes we're in the moment. We go for that short-term gratification. I'm a big fan of picking that apart as we go for that short-term gratification. Let me grab my phone and scroll TikTok for 2 hours. Let me have the piece of cheesecake. Let me have the alcohol. Let me binge watch, an entire season of Netflix instead of fucking focusing on personal development. So will I be happy with this decision or this choice tomorrow? And then if we forward think and put ourselves in that position tomorrow, am I going to look back and be, oh, I'm so glad that I wasted 2 hours of my life ignoring the fact that I've got something going on that I could have been reading a book or listening to a podcast or Googling something on the internet or using ChatGPT. And if you answer yourself honestly, then in that moment, you can sit there and say, am I willing to make a different choice? Yes or no? And I love the fact because yes or no questions, we can start that vibrational frequency to roll to sit there and say, am I willing to continue to tolerate this bullshit for myself? Yes or no? No. If it becomes acceptable, it becomes inevitable, like Bob Donnell says. Another aspect of questions I like to ask myself is that one, when did it become acceptable to lie to myself? When did it become acceptable to be overweight? When did it become acceptable to not treat myself right? When did it become acceptable to set the wrong example for my kids? It never became acceptable. Okay, what can I do in this particular moment to shift that energy? What can I do right now that will give me something to be proud of when I wake up in the morning? Because my word for the year, I always have a word for the year. This year, my word is pride. So how can I have a sense of pride today so that when I wake up tomorrow, I'm going to be proud of something? So when I go to bed tonight, my nightly ritual is that I think back upon the day and I think, what am I most proud of? I'm proud that I had an amazing conversation with Kari. I'm proud that I gave a free coaching session to somebody earlier today and it woke them up. I'm proud that I was in the moment with my son where he did something extremely frustrating and I didn't lose my shit. I'm proud of the fact that, whatever it might be. And as we go to bed at night and we sit there and we think about what we're most proud of, the second part of that is when we wake up in the morning, my morning ritual is that I say what I'm grateful for before my eyes open. I set my intentions. So my intention is to be present and playful with my son. My intention is to use my words and my actions to make this world a better place, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the last part is my I am statements. And right now I'm just focusing on I am peace because I tend to be a fucking mad sense of chaos all over the place. For you, and I think for the people out there, I would love to get your perspective on this. So many times we're in that moment. We're in the moment of survival. We're just trying to get by. We're struggling. We're doing all these things. What is your advice to people to find a bigger why? Because I know that when you have a big enough why, you have a big enough how. And I've illustrated that example so many different times in my life. For me, I have people write their eulogy. So for me, I was at a funeral back in 2008 and I'd have all my coaching clients do it. I have them do it pretty immediately. It's uncomfortable. But at 2008, I was at a funeral and I thought, if I died tomorrow, who would show up and what would they say? And this was 2008. And I was very successful at the time. I had an amazing corporate career. I was doing my coaching and speaking on the side. I had a live radio show. I didn't have the radio show then, but I was very successful on paper. I made a lot of money. I had 2 houses. I did all these things, but I thought 10 or 15 people will show up. They'll bring Bon Jovi and Motley Crue records. They'll bring Jack Daniels and Miller Genuine Draft. And they're going to talk about all the stupid shit Chris did. Because I've done a lot of stupid, crazy stuff. I've had a lot of fun in my life. I've also done some stupid stuff that I shouldn't have done. But I figured everybody's going to show, oh my God, remember that time Chris did this? Remember that time Chris did that? Oh my God. Oh, fucking you said, remember this? Blah, blah, blah. Oh yeah. He was a former 7th grade homeless dropout who changed the world. And I didn't want the postscript on my memorial service to be, oh yeah, he changed the world after all the stupid shit I did. And so I thought, and it bugged me as I was driving home. And I thought, what can I do about this? And so as uncomfortable as it was, I went home and I actually took pen to paper and I wrote out my eulogy and I nearly set it aside. And I went and got a glass of water. I came back. Nobody was in my house. And I started reading it to myself. I said, well, if this is going to be a eulogy, people are going to read it. And then I thought, okay, I got to read it out loud. And unbeknownst to me, not even suspecting this for a second, I started crying halfway through. I started not boohooing, but I just had tears rolling down my face. And I got to the part where it said, Christopher Rausch will have fought for what's right and what's fair. He will have risked for which that mattered. And he will have left the earth a better place for who he was and what he did. And I started crying, dude. And I was like, oh my God. And from that point forward, that's been my litmus test. Is this fulfilling my legacy? If today is my last day, if this is the last podcast I ever do, and my son watches this, is he going to say, wow, dad was using his voice and his words and his actions to fight for what's right and what's fair? Was he making the world a better place? Yes. And so that's what I tell people. Like when you have that big why and you're in that moment where you're overweight, you're unhealthy, you've got a drinking problem and you're ready to take that next sip. Am I going to be proud of this decision tomorrow? Is this part of my legacy? No. Okay, let me put this down and change what it is that I'm doing. What is that for you? What advice do you have for people to find their big why?
I don't know if I can top that. I think it's just to reiterate that idea of like, what do you want your legacy to be? And for me personally, it's always been, my kids have always been the litmus test. Yep. To know that their life was better than mine was, that I somehow imprinted something better for them. Right. And I'll just use this as an example. When their dad and I split, there was a season where it was pretty ugly and it was not fun and pretty. And I had so many people come to me and say, like, they would hear interactions I would have with my kids. And it was always my goal to remain neutral when I talked to my kids about their dad.
Good.
And people would be like, how can you do that? Like, what the hell? It was never my job to determine how their relationship was going to turn out with their dad, right? Like what happened between he and I had nothing to do with them.
True.
And I say that because then that carried into other things, right? Like that was the first big one. But then I realized, well, shit, that's this. It's not just their dad. It's how I interact with this other person, how I handle this situation, how they see me react to this, how they see me apologize and admit when I've done something wrong or something that I'm not proud of. And so, again, not to be cliche, but my kids have always been that litmus in kind of the same vein as you with your legacy is, but it was like, how do I want them to remember me in terms of how I handled that? Because that's how they're going to handle it later.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's just how I found my why, was to bring it through their eyes.
Exactly.
Right. To say, oh shit. Yeah, I should maybe do that. And so to your point, right? Like if they're seeing me have the second or third glass of wine every night, what does that show them? Right. And like you said, like, that's not something I would have been proud of, or to have them. So like, yeah, we used to work out together because then they could see it. And so it was just always about modeling for them how to be good humans. So
amazing. My kick-ass sister from another mister. We've already been going for 48 minutes. This has been a phenomenal conversation. There are so many.
I feel like we've just hit the tip of the iceberg.
I've always debated whether I want to go long form with the show, but I know so many people are like, Chris, keep it to 45 minutes because that's my drive to work, or that's how I'm going to work out for. I personally, I watch a lot of long form content, but this has been phenomenal. I definitely want to have you back on the show.
Yeah.
So we can continue the conversation. There's so many other things and directions that we can go. I want to grab what Ted said here for a second. He says, very important, Christopher, about asking questions to get yourself back on track with personal or business goals. It really is. And what you just mentioned, Karsta, is the fact that when we have that ability to step aside from our own ego and our own short-term gratifications, I know for myself is just like, would my son be proud of this if he were older? Mm-hmm. Am I setting that example? Like I sit there and talk to him about practicing and doing things. So one of the things I hold myself accountable with is I have a guitar downstairs. I have tons of guitars all over the house. Mm-hmm. People ask me if I'm a rock star. I'm like, no, because I don't practice enough. But for me, it's about congruency. And it's not about being a hypocrite. hypocrisy. Let me say that right word. For me, I can't stand that. Not being congruent, I can't stand that. So for me, I go downstairs. I was just doing a little while ago, I was practicing guitar, and he says, Dad, what are you doing? I said, I'm still practicing. I said, even though I've got this box fracture, I said, I'm still intent on continuing to learn how to play my guitar. I said, it takes effort, and sometimes it sucks, and sometimes I'm frustrated, but as long as I continue to practice, I'll continue to get better. And so I know when I'm leading by example and I'm not being a hippo. Oh, kitty. I have 5 cats. I was just looking at the cat over in the corner licking herself.
Buddy.
Squirrel. But where can people get a hold of you? Where can, and talk about, first of all, talk about your podcast, because I love it. I listened to a few episodes. Talk to us about the podcast and where people can get a hold of you.
Yeah. So easiest way to find me is on socials. I'm usually hanging out over on Instagram. It's at Kari Hurd on all socials: Insta, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, all of them. I do have a website. It's a bit under construction. So if they go to the website and they have troubles, they can always just email me, karsta@karstamarie.com. I'm happy to answer any questions that come in from the show. The podcast came kind of out of nowhere, and that's a long story for another day. But when I came up with the title of it, I was like, you know what, this is going to piss a lot of people off. And I love that. I was so excited about the fact that it's going to piss people off. This first, I don't know if you want to call it a season, but this first stretch has been a lot of stories of women sharing kind of these stories of overcoming and resilience, and some of the things that we're talking about in terms of, they were living in some struggling situations, and now they're, they've seen the light, or what, they had their sort of moment of epiphany, and they're moving into some resiliency and things like that. I've got visions for other things. I'm super excited. One day it will be live like this. I'm super excited about that. But it's just all about, unfiltered conversations about just what I said when we kicked off this show, is living your life on your terms and designing your life according to your rules, because none of the other rules matter. I don't care what your parents did. I don't care what your siblings do. I don't care what your friends or Jane down the street or, soccer mom Karen, or I don't care. It only matters what's important to you. And that's what we're all about.
And what's the name of the podcast again?
Fuck Fine. You can find us on Apple or Spotify.
Yes, I love that. Yeah. I love that. This has been a phenomenal opportunity for me to share this time with you. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for being such a powerhouse and for setting the example for so many women. Women are all my primary coaching clients are women. A lot of the people that will follow the show are women. So thank you for being that inspiration. And I'll be referring people over to listen to your podcast as well, and referring them to your website. So thank you. I'm going to put you backstage. Don't go anywhere so I can still chat with you, but I'm going to close out the show like I opened up the show. But thank you, my dear. And I will talk to you.
And thank you to everybody who watched. Thank you so much.
You're fantastic. You're awesome. And there we have it, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. I know I say that a lot. One of my friends just told me, he goes, I don't like it when you say boys and girls. Let me know in the comments. Are you okay with boys and girls? For some reason, that's what I just say, or I say rock stars. So Nellie says here, I didn't get a chance to catch this comment. She goes, yes, I can relate to that. When I changed my life and started treating myself better, I knew my kids would be able to learn from that. 100%, that congruency, that authenticity, setting that example. The Passion Project, Pulp Culture Passionitas. That's a long thing to say. She says, or they say, great show. Thanks, Christopher and Karsta. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing it out. If you did, so here's the deal, ladies and gentlemen. If you came into this conversation halfway through, go back and listen to the beginning of this show. Listen to the beginning of this conversation. There are so many aha moments. There's so many nuggets within this conversation that you can apply in your life. And like I said at the top of the show, write it down. I mean, yes, you could type it into your phone, but literally write it down so you can see it. I buy these pads from Amazon. I think it cost me $12 for a whole case of them, or a whole bundle of them. And I love to write it down. And the same thing, again, if you're coming in halfway, Post-it notes, like a couple of things that you learned from this podcast, put it on your computer monitor, put it on your dashboard of your car, put it on the mirror, right? Put a couple of things on the mirror that when you're brushing your teeth, I am worthy, I am abundant, I am changing, I am evolving, whatever it might be. Remind yourself from the start of your day to the end of your day that you are a motherfucking badass, that you deserve abundance and opportunities in your life, that just because your life was fucked up and just because other people told you that you were this and that doesn't make it true. It does not make it true. Your parents or anybody else. Hurt people hurt people. For me to understand, the biggest person in my life that caused me a lot of pain and a lot of harm was my mother. As you guys may or may not know, I didn't talk about it tonight, but it's just youandmekid.com. If you go to it's just youandmekid.com, my memoir will be out later this year. And it's all about my situations of being homeless and going through those adverse situations with my mom. And I had a lot of anger and resentment towards her. And she used to tell me, I'm 4 years old. I'm 4 years old. She would say that to me as a grown ass woman. And my mom, you're a fucking adult. Start acting like it. And as I was writing the book, I thought to myself, why did she keep saying she was 4? When she was a grown woman, she was extremely intelligent, book smart, people smart. She was stupid as the day is long. And I'm like, what happened to her at 4? Again, going back to the previous conversation where I talked about the fact that we become the people we're going to become from 0 to 5. And when she was 4 years old, it reminded me, oh, that's when her parents got divorced. And I started thinking about my grandfather and my grandmother. My grandfather was amazing. My grandmother was not a very nice person, to put it mildly. And so I thought, that's right. They were in their early 20s when they got divorced. So my mom was born in 1942, back in a different place and time, back when the world was different, back what was going on economically, what was going on with the wars, what was going on in the world in general, how were women treated back in those days, what pressures and what stereotypes and what challenges was my mother facing at that point in time. She was stuck. She lost her family at 4 years old, and she had to go live with her mother. And her mother was a bitch on wheels. I thought I got abuse. My mother got a lot of abuse. And she always told me, she goes, I'm trying to do better than what my mother gave me. And so when I realized that had I walked in my mother's shoes, had I gone through the things that she had gone through in her life, might I have been like her? And as much as it was painful for me to admit it, I thought, yeah, I probably would have been like her. In those times, I might have made those same decisions. It's not right, but it's the situation that she was in, and it was a situation I was involved in. And then I was ultimately able to look at it and go, you know what? Instead of having anger and resentment towards it, I have gratitude. I'm grateful that I went through all those adverse experiences, because it made me the man I am today, because I chose not to be a victim of it. I chose to rise above it. I chose to go back and get my GED. I chose to go spend 12 years and miss my 20s going to college and getting my master's degree. I chose to bust my ass and to become financially independent. I chose to use my story of being homeless and digging through dumpsters and trying to kill myself to help other people like yourselves have this moment we're having right now. I chose those things, and because I got to experience those challenges and adversities, it helped me become a better person. So wherever you're at in your life and your story, start changing the things that you're saying to yourself. Start changing your beliefs. Get people in your life that support you. Get a coach, get a mentor, get somebody in your life. Take time every single day for your personal development. I was just telling one of my coaching clients, I said, can you spend 45 minutes a day researching a topic that interests you, that you want to overcome? How to be better with finances, how to be better with relationships, how to deal with toxic people, how to deal with conflict. I said, what would your life be like in 3 months if you spent 45 minutes a day going to Google, going to YouTube, and spending that time learning how to change yourself and writing those things down and putting those things on sticky notes and actually changing your actions and your behaviors and your beliefs? And she got immediately, her physiology changed. She goes, I would probably be a different person. And I said, do you deserve to be that different person? Yes or no? And she's like, yeah, I do. And I said, how willing are you willing to do the work? How much are you willing to sacrifice binge watching fucking Netflix? How much are you willing to sacrifice, having drinks every night instead of focusing on your personal development? She goes, Chris, I'm ready. And that's where it is for you. You have to decide that you're sick and tired of being sick and tired. You have to decide that you're worthy of the opportunity to become the person that you're meant to become. Or you can keep doing what you're doing and hope, wish, and pray that someday, which does not exist on a calendar, by the way, that someday things are going to change and there's going to be some sort of savior that's going to ride in and change your life for you. Because it's not going to happen. And I'll tell you what's going to happen is you're going to get to the end of your journey and you're going to realize a bunch of regrets. And that's my whole thing in life. Karsten mentioned it. No regrets. Live your life every single day, because it's going by so fast. And it's going to pass you by, and you're going to wind up at the end of your days and go, man, I wish I would have done that. Let me just remind you that this is the youngest you'll ever be. This right now is the youngest you'll ever be. You have so many opportunities. You have Google, you have YouTube, you have ChatGPT. You have so many resources. Just spend the time, invest the time, get a coach like me, by the way. Get in my group accountability coaching program. It's amazing. It's totally affordable. There's my little commercial. It will change your life. Or keep doing what it is that you're doing and have those regrets. So I encourage you to do that. I will be back here next Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, live to answer your questions, to engage with you. Next week, who do we have? We have amazing guests. I'm booked up until December. I think might be into January. Let's see. Yes, I am booked into, I have my last show is December 31st with Adam Duvall. So I am booked through December. I've got some solo shows in there because you guys asked me to go solo every once in a while. Next week, oh shit, we have Steve Lowell in the house. Steve is a motivational speaker. He has an amazing story he's going to be sharing with you. So I encourage you to be here live with us if you can on the video cast. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on LinkedIn, we're all over the place. Feel free to go to rawandunscripted.com. Go back and check out the previous episodes. This is episode 271. There are some incredible episodes out there that will change your life. As Ted says right here, he says, great show, buddy. See you next week. Thank you, guys. Go out there and live your life. Be the change that you bitch about. And I love you guys. We'll see you next time here on the